All right, so we had an overview of different types of statements that are there. In this chapter, we'll start with the most commonly used statement in a programming environment, which is if statement, which is actually used for branching from one flow of control to another flow of control. And also you will discuss about if else, if, ladder and nested if statements in this chapter. So it should be more and more interesting when we get into these statements for you guys. Okay, so let's continue with this first statement, which is if statement. Okay, so let us look at if statement. So what is if statement? So it is basically a very important statement in programming, which is used for conditional branching. And it is also used to route two different execution paths. Say for example, if a condition is true, do something. If condition is false, do something else. So that's a simple example where we see the structure as if with a particular condition, a condition is nothing but a Boolean expression. So we discussed about expressions already. So it is nothing but a Boolean expression, and if it is true, do execute one statement or a code block. Else you could also have another statement executed, or another code block can also be there. So that's a basic concept. Say for example here, if A less than B, if it is true, then A is equal to 0, else B is equal to 0. So this is a very simple mechanism using which we can bring conditional flows in programming. We could also have if else ladder. So we do have this if else if, which is another common programming construct here. So here you could see that it is executed from top to bottom. So it's from a typical control, and then we see the condition coming into picture. So if a particular condition is satisfied, one statement is executed. Else, if you have other conditions, you could also bring in else if and add the second condition, then again statement, and third condition, statement, so on and so forth. And you could also have at the end some default clause. If everything is not the case, then else do something else. So that's a way in which you can basically bring this particular concept. So let us try to create a simple program to understand how do we use the if statement in a Java programming environment. Let me bring up my IDE. So let us create a simple program here. So for this demo, I have taken a problem of expense approval. So let's take some use case. Okay, let's take a simple problem where you want to approve the expenses. So the condition could be if the expense is greater than 25,000, then it is rejected outright. So we should ensure that it should be well within 25,000. And if it is between 10,000 and 25,000, you could say it requires approval from director. And if it is between 5,000 and 10,000, it requires an approval from a manager. If the expense amount is less than 5,000, it will be approved straight away. So this is a simple example which you can think of. So now when I'm explaining this, you could basically realize that, okay, if else, if else, if else, if. So this is a simple example where we can apply the if else statement. Not just that, if else ladder can be implemented for this problem. So let us see how can we solve this problem using this statement. So let us go and create a new class here. So expense approval class. Okay, so I need a main method. Let's get that input. So I need to know what is the amount, right? So we could say I can get it from an input, or I could just also have the amount right away added in the program. So let us get it from the user to understand the various conditions. System.in. All right, so I got the scanner. Okay, let me import the class here. and then I have a message, please enter expense amount. Let me say please enter this one, and then this is just a print. Okay, so then I'll be able to scan this. Okay, so let me say float expense is equal to scanner dot next float. So we could say I want the next float. So I got the expense amount captured in my program now. So now we will have to implement our if else ladder. So let us go ahead and look at this particular thing. If expense is greater than 25,000.0f. All right, so then let us reject it outright. So we'll just put a system out for now. All right, rejected. Okay, so we can just say this expense is rejected. All right, now comes the question about the second condition. Second condition is when you have the expense amount well within 10K and 25K. So now you could say second condition. So else if, I would say else if, sorry, condition if we could basically bring in expense is less than equal to 25,000 F. Okay, and then it is greater than, let's bring this here, greater than 10,000 0f, and the condition, right, and then dot 0f. Let's take a simple example here. So in this case we could say requires say director's approval. All right, director approval we could say. Okay, that should be okay, just for the sake of. Similarly, we could bring the second condition, or the third condition rather, for our use case here. So we could also do check here if it is greater than 5,000. All right, and expense is less than or equal to 10,000. All right, so now see, look at the guarding conditions here. So greater than 10,000 and less than equal to 10,000. So that's even if it is 10,000, it comes with manager approval request, manager approval. All right, else we know that this thing is less than 5,000. It should be less than 5,000, right? So we are just coming in the sequence. So based on this, we could say expense approved. So this is a very simple mechanism, we could say. Okay, so now let us run this program here. Run this program, and we should basically see an option to enter some data, and then we can test it out. Okay, so please enter the amount. So I would say 30,000. Okay, so when I add this particular thing, so you would see this is expenses rejected. Okay, so next let us run this again. Okay, so now if I say it is 22,000, so this requires director approval. So it is coming there, and if it is the next level, say around 12,000, oh, 120, yeah. So it said this requires director approval and requires manager approval. We can also bring one condition for manager approval, say around 9,000. And at last, we can test this program. If it is less than 5,000, it should basically be approved. All right. So let's say it is 4,999 or even 5,000, it should basically work. Because 5,000 means it is approved. That's a simple example of how we can implement this logic of expense approval mechanism using a very simple if statement where we have this option. And since there is only one statement, the braces are not mandatory. Even without that, it will work. But as a good practice and ensuring that tomorrow, if you want to add one more line, you don't have any ambiguity there, it is better that we bring them inside braces. So that's a best practice we see in the industry. And I would also recommend that you can keep them as a standard practice, whether you're putting one line of code or multiple lines of code. It is very simple that we can just put them inside braces. All right. So with this, we come to this particular if statement with ladder. This also we have completed. It is also possible that we can nest if statements as well. So we could also include one if statement inside another if statement. So this is also possible, where the same logic what we discussed and implemented now, if it is less than 25,000, then if it is less than or greater than, so we could also nest, for example, which is also another option, where if you want to use a nested blocks, so if I is equal to 10, if it is equal to 10, then come here, and if it is less than 20, do something. If it is greater than 100, do something. So different variables you want to test, so that is also possible. So you have an option to nest the if statements one within the other. So this is about if statements. So next we will look at the next control statement in the next lesson, which is about switch statement. So see you there in the next chapter.